welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Jason Balin, Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz, Equity Warehouse, tuning into you live with another great guest. Definitely looking forward to this one, Ian. You know, a little bit of a mix between, self-storage, some other residential, buying distressed residential debt. But, just it seems like, our guest is going to be an investor that has a lot of different experiences with a bunch of different facets of real estate asset classes, which is great. And as everybody knows, we're not trying to bring on gurus and things like that. Ian and I talk about real estate every day. We're very, we're very active inside of our individual businesses, and we like to talk, just candidly have conversations with other real estate investors in the industry. Sometimes they're in our asset classes, sometimes they're in other asset classes. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Promise we'll keep this entertaining and educational. If you're a return viewer, follower, listener, watcher of the channel, thanks again for all your support. As you know, we work hard regularly to bring on great guests, and definitely looking forward to this one again.
Yeah, and don't let Jason lie to you, because our conversation started out this morning, I believe, with something along the lines of marketing. Then we talked real estate. Then we talked about golf for about a half hour. So it was a good hour that we spent this morning talking. So it is everything from real estate to golf and everything in between. So they're always good conversations. That's how this podcast started. Guys, if you get any value out of this show, we do not care about the subscribes or the likes, but what we do care about is the shares. It's the best compliment we can give our guests. You guys are going to get a ton of value out of today's show. I know because we've had both his business partners on here, and he's surrounded himself with very, very good people. I know you guys got very good value from his business partners that have been on here. So enough about us. Guys, if you get any value, share it, and let's bring in Joe Downs. What's up, brother?
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for having me on. That was quite the intro. I'm looking forward to this. But I just want full disclosure. I'm here to talk about golf.
This is the golf podcast.
Let's switch it up.
I'm all about doing golf. I'm all about doing a golf podcast.
I got my Masters logo on.
Ryder Cup this weekend as we're filming this one, so we're all ready to go. So, but it's not often that I get to have a guest that's literally more or less down the street, another local Philadelphia investor.
Right.
But Joe, you want to just kind of give everyone kind of a little bit of background of what you do, and we'll kind of hop into your story here.
Yeah. So, like anyone else, like you guys, we've all evolved into becoming things we probably never thought we would. But where I sit today, I kind of wear a couple different hats. We, as you mentioned, you've had my partners on. So I have one partner in a distressed debt company, U.S. Mortgage Resolution. Tom Dunkel, we buy charged off. Which is an accounting term, but basically defaulted residential second mortgages from banks, and then we help homeowners get on payment plans or loan mods, if you will. And yeah, so we've been doing that for over 15 years now. That's been like any business, it goes through cycles. There was a period of time where we couldn't buy distressed debt because the CFPB was created. If you guys recall, I don't remember the exact year, but it nearly put us out of business in 2014, 15, and 16, roughly, maybe 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. Actually, I think those were the years. And it was during that time that I realized we thought it was a business, but it turns out it's a really nice hobby. And we're gonna need to find something else to do. So, Jason, that's probably where I'm pretty sure that's where I started trying my hat at hard money lending and flipping houses. That's where I ran across, guys from your company. I'm pretty sure I put deals in front of you guys to try to fund them. I was trying to originate hard money deals, trying to do anything kind of like you guys said in the beginning, real estate related, right? Love real estate, been in real estate for a long time, but just found myself having to kind of reinvent a little bit here and there along the way, but always stayed. Once I got into real estate, always tried to stay in real estate. And lo and behold, during that period of time where I was very open-minded and a little more free than I would have liked to have been, I got an email from a guy named Scott Myers, didn't know him. I'm sure I was at a conference with him. We used to speak at a lot of conferences on distressed debt. And I got this email about the subject line was real estate with no tenants, toilets, and trash. Got me to open it. Turns out that wasn't entirely true, but the body of the email that really grabbed my attention there was a line in it that said something to the effect of, and Ian, you being in the business, probably remember these stats. At one point, I think the line was like 80% of all storage facilities were owned by mom and pop owners. So maybe that was 2017 that I got that email. That resonated with me, and it resonated with me because in our distressed debt business, this secondary market, we buy pools of these things from banks, and then what we do with them is, if we can't work them out, sometimes we resell them again. That whole market was so discombobulated. It was so mom and pop. It was so disorganized. It was so fragmented. It was so just wild, wild west, that I'm coming fresh out of that, and I'm hearing 80% mom and pop going, whoa, there's got to be opportunity here. And what was more interesting to me about that, which surprised me, was this is like supposed to be what I thought, because I didn't know much about it. I thought it was a more mature commercial real estate niche in self-storage. And you're telling me 80% is not mom and pop, not Public, Extra Space, and CubeSmart? I would have thought it was the other way around. Again, no, I didn't know anything about the industry. So that's what really piqued my interest. Then I started reading more. Then I bought his at-home course. I'm that guy. I'll buy your course if you're selling it. Please don't put me on your email list, because I will buy your course. But, I got the at-home course, whatever. More and more I read, I was like, wow, this is interesting. And I started to fall in love with it. But I didn't know how to make a first move. And the way he was set up, you had to come to his academy. Well, his academy was, at the time, was like Indianapolis. I'm like, I'm not flying to Indianapolis for 3 days. I don't know much about this. I'm on my way to being broke again, by the way, because we're going out of business because we can't buy distressed debt right now. So I'm watching dollars, and I'm trying to figure out the next move. And then, I don't know, 9 months later, they came to Philadelphia with their, Academy Roadshow. And I was like, well, it doesn't cost me anything now. I just have to go down to a hotel for, it cost me my time now, because I've already paid for it. It's free to go there. So I went to his 3-day academy and came away. That was one of those, I couldn't sleep at night, those nights. You go home and you try to lay down in bed, and your mind's just racing, like, oh my God, there's so much I can do here. And that the rest is history. Ended up hiring him, going through his training, his mentorship program back in 2018, I think. And, what it was, 2025. So 20 facilities we've acquired later of different styles, not just self-storage. We've got boat and RV storage. We've got a valet storage one. Now we're developing a niche within the niche. And now I'm teaching at his academy and mentoring students like me from, me of 7 years ago. And it's been a wild ride. And I tell people all the time, it's like self-storage, and Ian, you're into other things as well. Self-storage, I always tell people, self-storage is what brought us here, but it's every other niche and derivative underneath it or tangential to it that's keeping me not only here, but interested in growing. So that's a little bit about my kind of a little wild ride here, but it's been a fun one. I love it.
Well, this has been a hot topic on our show. And since you've owned storage let's call it COVID, and, I'm sure you've seen some massive equity gains on some of those older facilities that you purchased. Are they all long-term buy and holds, or have you sold some of these, and, cashed out and got into, newer opportunities?
You had to go there. No, I'm kidding. There's a saying I like to say: COVID giveth and COVID taketh away.
Yeah.
So, look, COVID storage was an essential business. People were back at home clearing out houses, right? All of the stuff came to storage facilities. And the other interesting thing that happened then was everyone learned how to do it contactless and remote. And really, there was a rapid increase in the use and adoption of technology, even by the old mom and pop folks, because they had to, right? So you saw occupancies go through the roof, rates went with it, right? Values were off the charts. There was a period during and slightly after COVID. I don't know when COVID officially ended, right? I think it ended for differently for people and in different parts of the country. I think we all just decided when it was over, right? But there were times where that people were, including us, trying to buy storage facilities above asking, and you couldn't even get a call returned by a broker, right? So the Jason, your very pointed question that it sounds like I'm dancing around, and I'm not. I'm going to get there. We sold facilities shortly after that for returns we cannot duplicate because they're through the roof. And I had to tell people that after the fact, like, what are your investors? What are your average returns? Like, they're not real. They're COVID fueled, right? They were in 40 IRRs. It doesn't happen anymore, right? And on top of that, we bought, just like everybody else, facilities that were probably overvalued. Not at the time were they considered overvalued. Looking back, overvalued, right? And
Because
so
you were new.
There's
Because you were new, and you
yeah,
know you
hadn't
didn't
been
know
through that
better.
cycle.
You didn't
Yep.
know better.
Didn't know better. And we are fighting the good fight right now. Now you are learning how to operate, not learning how, you are grinding as an operator out of those facilities.
Yep.
That's one of the beauties of storage. You can, we have one that we really got hurt on for other reasons. You had your COVID reasons, and then 2 or 3 other reasons on top of it. And we couldn't survive that one. But even the ones that are just really COVID was the real problem here, the timing of it, or, the fact that we bought something that was inflated. We're working our way out of them. And that's one of the beauties of self-storage is you can grind your way out of a jam in storage. And that's one of the reasons I really like it too.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Right now is a time that you're learning how to market, how to compete, how to run specials, how to operate, how to hold people very, very accountable. And I think I'd be interested in your opinion on this. So, you go to Scott Meyer's event, you said it, no toilets, no, they say no tenants, but you still have a tenant.
Of course you have tenants. And sometimes they leave trash.
Yeah, they leave trash, and then sometimes they want to live in them, and sometimes they want to do things that aren't legal, and they bring their bad friends with them. Like, it happens. Yeah. But I guess, like, going back to, like, when you first started, and, this is a good conversation, but, like, how have you seen that evolve from, like, what your expectation? Do you think you had such blinders on to be like, man, this is the best asset class in the world, there's going to be no problems, and, like, where you are today, and even where the market is, like, how did you cope, or what did you learn that maybe wasn't true from that email that what it is today, and, like, what the value of having, say, a Scott Myers or a coach, or just even having someone else to communicate with, right?
Yeah. Well, having the coach and the mentor is fantastic to get you through that, and a mastermind. So other folks just let you know, like, I don't think you were in our mastermind, but guys like you, Ian, right? Or Jason would have, if you were a storage guy, you would have been in that type of mastermind where you're bouncing ideas off each other. What have we learned? So there's been an evolution of learning. Certainly there was the initial blinders on, for sure. We thought we were still one of the early to this asset class. And I think we were, but there's a lot of money that came into the space, right? So the space exploded around us probably faster than we realized it would. So there's been a lot more competition. But part of that evolution of learning was finding your niche within it. So what we found is, there's an old saying that I like that, if you want to beat Tiger Woods at something, you can, just don't play him in golf. Like I brought golf back into this, boys. So, right. So who's Tiger Woods in our space? Well, it's not just the REITs, right? It's institutional regional players. You know the names, Ian, right? That maybe other folks might not know the names, but there's regional names, and I don't want to compete with them. So how do we? Because I can't, right? My capital stack is very different than theirs. Maybe they're more sophisticated than we are. I'm not. I'll believe that to a certain degree. I think there's other things we can do that they can't. But what we learned was where we can operate most efficiently and effectively. And that's actually where storage is not just owned 80% by mom and pop. It's probably close to 95% by mom and pop. And that comes down to not a geography, but a size, right? So if you look at that, and you could agree or disagree with that, I'm going to use 30,000 square feet as kind of a demarcation line. Facilities that are smaller than 30,000 square feet, you don't get competition from the bigger institutional players all the way up to the biggest REITs. They're not interested in that space. They can't operate in that space. Economies of scale aren't there for them. We can teach people to. So that's one of the things you learn, or how you evolve in this space. When you first come in here, you think you're competing with everybody, and I'm looking at 60,000 square foot facilities like a moron. Like I'm going to have any chance of competing for that facility, right? So and that's just part of the process. You learn that you're not going to. The other thing you learn is how to embrace technology, right? And then also how to, which helped us a lot. When I'm talking with like pricing, the Veritech, using tools that the REITs use. They're now available. They didn't exist when I got into the space. They're now available to us. And then how to get out of your own way. So here's decisions we've been making recently is we've been managing our own facilities, setting up the teams, using technology, using what's available to us, which has been great. We're able to do stuff over the last 7 years you couldn't do the 7 years prior to that, right, in terms of managing facilities. But that doesn't mean that others aren't getting just as good, if not better at it than we are. And that's what we're looking in the mirror saying, why are we still doing this? There's now 6-7 different managers. When we started, there were a handful of managers that would have looked at the stuff we were buying. Now we've got a matrix of them, and we're deciding who's the best fit for this facility, who's the best fit for that facility. So the industry has evolved around us even while we're in it. And some in management company anyway, have far surpassed what we can do. So we're now looking in the mirror going, why are we still doing this? Why don't we harness this, get out of our own way, put this over here, and then we can keep focused on what we're good at, which is sourcing, evaluating, underwriting, and negotiating these other deals all around the country, and usually off market.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. It's definitely like the who, not how, or buy back your time type model, and spending the time and trying to find that, and I think that's smart. Do you think there is value in, and I know Jason with his mastermind group kind of talks about this too, of like having to go through the bumps and bruises to then be able to hire the right management company or put the right processor in place? We've tried management companies, and I think our expectations are too high sometimes. Maybe we like to tinker too much. We've only really had one successful property manager on an apartment building, and we've always ended up just self-managing everything else. What's your feeling on taking the bumps and bruises before putting a manager in place? And it could really be any asset class, substitute what you want, but obviously storage is your strong suit, versus saying, hey, just go right to a management company day one. Like, do you think there's benefits or no benefits to that?
I mean, there can't not be benefits to you knowing, right, how to operate something so that when you negotiate or manage a manager, you can call the bullshit out, right? I can curse on your podcast, right?
Yeah, come on, man. You know me. Let it rip.
Yeah, right. There can't not be a benefit to that. That said, when we're coaching and mentoring, I've got the scar. I literally have it on my face. We've got the scars. So we're showing our students you can do this. And by the way, there are scenarios where it does make sense for them to manage. And I'm never opposed to that if they can do it and they can do it well, because you will learn the inside of the business. I mean, one of my long life lessons I tell people is when I owned a bar and restaurant, because every 30-year-old guy should, because we think we should. And I had a background in bartending, right? So I could run the front of the bar, no problem. That was easy. But I had no idea how to run a kitchen. And what killed me? The kitchen, right? So I basically outsourced management of my kitchen to my chef, and it took me under, and it cost me a lot of money, and it cost me the business. I don't regret it, because that was more valuable than a college education, right? And I use that learning experience, in everything I do. Although I did make the same mistake twice. If you want to learn about that, I'll tell that later. I did it in storage, but it's an invaluable experience to learn about it. In fact, our first facility we bought, Tim Kaine spent 3 days a week there in Waldorf, Maryland, learning how to manage the facility. So I'm never going to tell somebody, don't do that. But I can confidently tell them, if they can't do it and they want to buy a storage facility, we've gone through the hurt for you. We'll show you how this gets done. using third parties, and we'll teach you how to manage them. But we're teaching you how to do something you haven't done. It will never replace doing it yourself.
Do you think, let's go back to what you mentioned related to, back in the day, the market for self-storage was a little bit different. Now there's a lot of REITs and institutions and stuff in this space, and similar to the hard money lending space as well. 20 years ago when I started, there was nobody except, old, rich attorneys that lent private money out as a hard money company.
You're so right. Your space has gone through the same evolution.
So it's very similar. Do you think it goes back to where it was, or is it? And what I mean by that is, do the REITs decide, like, you know what, this asset class isn't what we want it to be at anymore, and we're going to just take our football and go elsewhere. We're going to start investing in other asset classes. And I agree with you. I mean, I have related to, I've got limited partnerships in a lot of storage facilities. So even though I'm not operating them, I get to look at the financials on all of them. And I think, and I agree, and I think Ian would also agree related to the smaller facilities, the 30, smaller than 30,000 square foot facilities. I mean, obviously there's challenges and, caps on how much money you can make on that when you can't, when there's things on bigger facilities that you can support having that you might not be able to support financially on the smaller stuff. But do you think we get to a point in storage where, you can get back to where it was back in the day? I guess that's probably the best way to explain it.
I think I know it's a good question. I think I know what you're saying. What's the old saying? History repeats itself, but never the same. First of all, I don't know. So Wall Street's driven by return. So if the return starts to disappear, Wall Street will take its money and go play in a different sandbox. I don't think Wall Street are the REITs, though. I think the REITs are having a different problem. They are having a saturation problem. And the way they're combating that, at least what we've seen through examples, I'm not on the phone with them, and these aren't private conversations I'm having with public, but I'm watching what they're doing. Some of them are forming partnerships with smaller regional operators, right? And they're using some economies of scale there. Others are staying within storage, but moving into a different space in storage. So you're seeing them as the boat and RV industry matures and gets bigger. I think we're seeing money come into that. Right? For instance, the largest operator of boat and RV facilities last year, I don't know how many they have now, had like 52 facilities. That's nothing. I mean, Extra Space is 3,500 or something like that, right? It's nothing. I mentioned, not on the podcast previously, I mentioned we're building pro storage facilities. They're just mini warehouses, right? It's storage, but they're 1,000 square feet, 500 to 1,000 square feet. Whereas self-storage, your 2-bedroom apartment of a self-storage facility is a 10 by 10, right? That's your most common size. It's 100 square feet. That's a B2C. We're building B2B. The REITs love that. And you're seeing them move into that space because it's the same management style with, actually, it's easier to manage. Same square footage, right? So I'm building 90,000 square feet. They love it. That's perfect for them, right? But I only have 137 customers, not 450.
So
my delinquency rate is going to be 0, and I know that because I already own one. And theirs is they pay money to keep theirs between 2% and 8%, right?
Talk to us just real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but I got to ask on the pro storage. Are you doing month-to-month leases, or are you doing longer-term leases?
We'll have both.
Okay.
You have to recognize that our customer is a business owner, and they're not going to want to run their business month to month, right? You're going to be there for a year, 3 years. I mean, I'm sitting in office in a 3-year lease. I can't be told I've got 30 days to move, right? So we'll have the ability for both, but you'll be able to flex up and down based on that.
Yeah, we're driving more towards flex space. We're doing a deal right up here in Southampton, converting an old office building that was for Countrywide Mortgage, which you're probably very familiar with, that we're converting to flex space and selling the condo units off. But it's the same thing. I think one thing, and I would agree with you, not to make it about myself, but is I like storage, but that transaction of the in and out. And I think that's one point maybe I was alluding to earlier from that email. There's a lot of turnover. The flex space, and what I found out for me anyway, is that I enjoy that better because it's a class tenant that I can talk to like a normal human being, have a real conversation. I understand that you're in business. So are we, number one. And then number two, longer term. I like those longer term leases. I like that, hey, you're here for a year. You're here for 3 years. It's a little more predictable rather than being like, oh my God, I spend more money on Google marketing every month. And I believe both worlds are great. I really enjoy that more flex industrial type space over the storage space for me personally. And again, that's from owning, 15 facilities and going, okay, I've got my dick kicked enough. My favorite facility is the one that's set up more like a flex space. And I'm like, okay, I enjoy that out of the whole portfolio. So I think that's important.
I agree. And the reason I like what we're doing, which is very similar to Small Bay Flex, right? It's just a little different. Nobody's working in our units, but we're also giving business owners an opportunity to start their business without having to sign a 1 or a 3 year lease with a lot of money down. Yep. Jason, to tie off your point, I think if you see the margins narrow, the institutional capital will start flowing elsewhere. Yeah. I can't predict whether it's going to, but I think that's what you'll see happen. If it does, I think it'll get a little bit easier to operate in our space. So maybe we'll have less pressure up to 40 and 50,000 square foot facilities. Maybe we will start to be able to buy those again. But I don't think the REITs are going anywhere. I think they're just going to find a way to morph into different product type.
Makes sense. And that could be helpful for smaller operators if they can partner with those REITs and get, that's not. I mean, again, none of these things are good or bad. It's just different that you got to adapt to. I mean, the business today, everyone's business today looks different than the past.
You do see them picking off smaller facilities in markets they're already in, like a hub and spoke model. So if it's a well-run facility and all they have to do is buy it and add it to, it's 2 miles, 3 miles away from their 100,000 square foot facility, they'll continue to add square footage in chunks that way.
What have you put any thought into? Because I do think about it a lot that most of the REITs still operate from having a human being on site model. And even with some of these smaller hub and spoke ones that you still see them put a part-time employee there manning an office doing something like that. Whereas we're able to run facilities unmanned. Have you had any conversations with any of them, like why they won't adopt that policy or, what I'm trying to say? I do.
I don't see them doing it sheerly because of the size, right? They have 300, 400, 500, 600 customers. So there's constantly people on their property, constantly with questions, constantly with needs, constantly with problems. You and I are running facilities where no one might show up that day, right? So it's a waste of time for us to have somebody there. That said, Ian, one of the things, looking in the mirror, not perfect, still learning. I learn every day in this business. We are looking at one of our facilities right now. We are beating our head against the wall. We cannot get over the hump with it. And that's what started this whole process of us looking at third-party management again. We think we need to put somebody there. I think a REIT would manage it better than we would because I think we need someone on site because of the traffic. So I think the size that they own and operate dictates having somebody there. And I think the size that you and I typically run and operate doesn't make sense to. And then, you do have a mid-range there where it's questionable, and that might come down to the market. And we have a mid-range one. It's 60,000, high 50s, low 60s, something like that. In Bowling Green, Kentucky, we can't get over the hump with it. We can't make money. So we're actually going to turn the management over to a third party who's probably going to put somebody there and have a much better SEO presence in the market than we do.
We went through the similar problem. We have 250,000 square feet in a 12-mile radius. And we said, okay, we can run this hub and spoke. And we've actually forced more people, more managers back on site. And have staff on site because of the sheer square footage. And we've noticed that there's still walk-ins. That is still like a real thing. And everyone says, oh, you can automate. And I think again, you have very good insight of that 30,000 being like that demarcation line, plus or minus, depending on the market and what type of asset it is, to have someone there or run third party or run unmanned, and you need to figure that out. So, I mean, those are absolutely awesome experiences. One thing I got to ask you, and I know this might be a little off topic, and I've been thinking about this one. How do you manage? Because it sounds like, storage, you got Tim dialed in. Sounds like you and Tom got your mortgage, USMR, right? Mortgage dialed in. How do you manage the two partnerships? We've interviewed both Tim, and we know Tim's still doing his own building houses, and Tom's still doing some of his own things. How do you manage those two partnerships? Almost two separate businesses. Like, how does that look like for you on like a daily or weekly basis?
It's very easy because I've spent very little time with U.S. Mortgage Resolution. We have one guy run the whole business. Regulation took us out of the business. We can't talk to homeowners. We can't. It's all done through third parties that are licensed mortgage servicers and debt collectors. So they regulated us out of the business. When we started in 2009 and 10, I was on the phone with homeowners talking about their loan and working out with them. I can't be on the phone with them anymore. It's illegal. So we have one guy run the business. And all I do is maintain relationships with the banks. So, once a year, I'm up in New York at a dinner. And hopefully once or twice a year, they have a trade or a pool they'll put out for us to buy. And, technology works for us there as well. So everything's done very quickly. There's just not a lot. We even put it this way, we meet once every 2 weeks for 30 minutes. And then I go to New York once a year for a night and dinner. So 99% of my time is in self-storage. So I'm really running one business, but within that business, I'm running value add, teaching, coaching, mentoring, and development now. And we're trying to build the IP, continue to build the IP and the due diligence process on IOS properties, industrial outdoor storage.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to define that. Talk about iOS, because I know it's like the newest, hottest asset class. I talked to our debt broker. He's like, dude, find me some of this. I'll lend you whatever you want. I'm like, oh, dude, like it's just a parking lot. Like, really? But let's talk about a little bit about iOS and like what you're seeing and where you think that's going, and give the audience a little nugget on that one.
Yeah, so in its purest form, first of all, we started looking at it because it is also a derivative of storage. If you take... And this is how it sort of started, because otherwise it could also be called lay down yards. But from the storage perspective, you take 2 acres and maybe you're carving it up into quarter acres, right? So you got 8 tenants, and maybe they're landscapers or hardscapers or whatever. And they each need a quarter of an acre. So you fence it, maybe you gravel it, maybe you had to clear it, don't know. It's probably zoned light industrial, depends on where you are, but let's just call it that. And then you're fencing it, gating, and cameras, right? That was the initial thought process on iOS. Then from there, what we learned was, we have a facility in Wilmington, North Carolina, came with 2 extra acres. We graveled it, fenced it, gated it, camered it. We were going to park, we couldn't build on it. We had some power lines overhead. So we were going to park boat and RVs, right? So just boat and RV storage. And then we're like, you know what? We weren't getting a lot of traction, so we brought in the brokers, thinking maybe this is perfect for an Amazon fleet of vehicles, right? So we brought some brokers in, and they said, "Oh, this is one of the nicest iOS lots we've ever seen." We're like, weren't thinking this was iOS. Talk to us more about this. And they said, "We think we can get you $6-7 grand a month per acre." And we have 2 acres. We're like, "Well, that was our year 3 NOI." So it turns out our first iOS property, which we're not under contract yet with a lease, but it's getting close. Turns out our first one, we over improved because we striped it for vehicles or everything. But you make mistakes along the way. It is what it is. So that was the trigger that turned me on to, wait, why aren't we looking at more iOS? So I'm not sitting here before you today. I hope to come back on maybe 9 months, a year from now with as much more of an authority on iOS. I'm new, green behind the ears and learning. So I don't have all of the IP and due diligence behind why is this site going to work versus that one. We know certain things like population growth and path of progress and stuff like that. But I'll come back and I'll tell you what I find if you'll have me back. But that's it. What do I love about it? It's really light development, really light, right? I'm not negotiating with a mom and pop over whether he thinks his facility is worth this or that. It's just land. And you already told me it's for sale because you listed it, right? You could go off market and you could try to negotiate that way. But if you just started with it's listed for sale, it's light industrial, there's not a ton to negotiate, right? It's just, do you see the value? Do I see the value? You can, as part of your due diligence, you can bring in iOS land brokers, or there's now iOS brokers. I know 2 or 3 of them that are specializing in it. And they'll tell you through their contacts what they think you can get. And then from there, you're just backing into, all right, I got to gravel it, I got to fence it, I got to camera it, what's going to cost. But my favorite part is once I'm done and I sign a lease, whether it's a year or 3 or 5, it's a triple net lease. You just did it. I'm done. There's no management. There's nothing.
No buildings for guys to drive into,
Right.
Yeah.
No camera, no employees to worry about, no cameras to replace, no one's sleeping in a unit, no drug deals going down. Well, if there are,
Well, maybe. Take it easy there.
Do whatever you want. I don't care. Right? So to me, it's a really light development, low risk. You could even look at it like a land banking play, right? If you're buying something in a path of progress, 5 years from now, you think those 4 acres are going to be worth, Wawa's going to want to open up on these 4 acres 4 years from now, but not today. Land bank it, let people put infrastructure projects down there or whatever, right? And you just sit on it, right? Yep. So there's so much optionality with it. You could, and the cash flow like crazy if you do it right. You could refi or cash out pretty quickly. That's the other thing. It's not a 2-year development. We're talking months, and then you put somebody in it, and how long before you can refi out?
Your worst case is going to be disruption in stormwater management, depending on how stringent the city is.
You might have to clear it, but that's a business decision you're making as part of your calculation. You might have stormwater management, again, a business decision you're making as part of your underwriting.
Yeah, and depending where you are, you can play some games, only do a half acre at a time or whatever. So I'd be interested. The only way we're going to let you back on the podcast, though, is we're going to have to go play a round of golf. I heard Jason say that. So there you go. There's the golf reference again.
Jason, you got to come up. I'm at St. David's, and we are under renovation right now, taking it back to the original Donald Ross. It's going to look incredible. They're saying it's going to be one of the nicest courses in the area. I didn't say best. It's one of the nicest looking.
Okay. Game on. I'll make sure he puts it on the calendar. No, but that is awesome about the iOS, and interested to watch your career path and doing more deals and seeing some case studies on that. We would love to have you back on. Joe, one thing that we like to ask everybody before we let them go is what's one book or podcast that you think everybody should go take a listen to, or something that you're finding very insightful right now?
I mean, your podcast, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
I will tell you this. I've done a lot of podcasts. I love the fact there's 2 of you. I love the banter back and forth. I love how one of you is thinking while I'm talking and come up with a really good question. So it is probably one of the better podcasts to listen to. Book 2 for me. You already said 1, Who Not How. The other one, I wish I read it sooner, and I need to read it again because I don't think it's probably a 3-time through book. It's The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. There's just so many good nuggets in there, and there's no way you get them all the first time through.
Yeah, we'll get that in the show notes. I haven't heard that one in a while, so we will get that one in the show notes. Joe, if people want to learn, they want to get coached by you, they want to learn more about what you guys are doing over at Belrose, where's the best place they can find you on the interwebs, so we can get those in the show notes as well?
On the online?
On the old online.
Email is probably the best way. Just email me at joe@belroseam.com. That's BELROSE, A as an asset, M as in management.com. Or you go to belrosestorategroup.com. You can find us there as well.
Cool. We will definitely get that in the show notes, guys. As you can see, even though Joe coaches, he is a real investor doing real deals and giving real life lessons. And by that means, he is definitely not a guru. He is one of us that is out there doing it, and we enjoy this conversation. So, guys, if you got any value out of this, please give it a share. It'll be a huge compliment to Joe. Brother, we appreciated this conversation. It was a good one, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.